If you are an estate agent, letting agent, or someone who wants to know what's happening in the property market, then this, the UK Property Market Stats Show, is for you. My name is Chris Watkin, and each week I have a special guest. This week it's Iain White. We'll come to Iain in a second. The purpose of this show is to show you what's happening in the UK property market right here, right now. Other statistics like the Nationwide and Halifax looking at the sales data from 2 or 3 months ago. And the Land Registry is looking at sales from 5, 6, 7, 8 months ago. We're looking at what happened last week. And using the tools that we have, we can foretell what those indices are going to do months and months in advance. So, as I said, if you're an estate agent, letting agent, or someone who's interested in the property market and where it's going, then, as I said, this show is for you. This week, it is week 10 of 2024. Looking at my calendar, that is Monday, the 4th of March, all the way through to and including Sunday, the 10th of March. Iain White is a guru to the estate agency industry. He used to be big in the name when he was a director at Romans, and now has the finger on the pulse of the industry because he deals with many estate agents as their guru and go-to coach and all-round top guy. Thanks for joining me today, Iain.
My pleasure, Chris. Thank you for having me on again.
Well, you're always damn good value for money, mate, and you always tell it like it is. So this show is roughly split into two, ladies and gentlemen. The first half looks at the UK property market, where we look at listings, price reductions, sales agreed, fall-throughs, exchanges, and other data. And then the second half is that we focus particularly on a town or a city. And this week, we're going to the town of Chesterfield in Derbyshire. Now, if you're not a Chesterfield agent, you might find that a little bit dull and boring, but my recommendation is do watch it, because we're going to be using a piece of software, which in my humble opinion is a game changer, and it can show you if you are a better estate agent or not. So if you're having trouble with attracting more valuations or getting higher fees or having issues with overvaluing, this can show your punters, your potential vendors, how other agents are performing and how well you are performing, so you can get more listings and higher fees. Right, Iain, so that's how the show's going to go. So let us dive in and let us have a look at the stats. So, as always, ladies and gentlemen, we always start with the listing. So I'll just rattle through these and then Iain can give his thoughts. So year to date, we're on 332,500 properties listings year to date. In terms of the number of properties that we have listed this week, 37,903 at an average price of £440,000. And as you can see on the graph here, when you look at the number of listings per week compared to 17, 18, 19 and 23, we are very much ahead of the pack. Okay, Iain, scores on the doors. What's your thoughts on listings?
I mean, look, they're steady as she goes. We are seeing, we are genuinely as an industry seeing more properties coming on the market. And if you look at the actual stock for sale, I'm not sure if one of your slides has got this later on. It probably has, but you know, I think the amount of choice available out there for would-be movers is good, and that bodes well as long as we do the right thing in terms of getting them sold. I mean, obviously, as we know, we've had lots of stats around 50-odd% fail to sell. So, but I mean, and you're starting to see people now moving for traditional reasons. I think we've had a bit of a quirky thing with people downsizing because of the cost of living. We've had some quirkiness going on in the marketplace, but now we're just seeing sort of, for the want of a better word, Middle England moving for normal reasons, and it's just settling into a fairly standard pattern. So I think it sort of bodes pretty well. I think the budget might bring some slight nuances as to the type of properties coming onto the market, particularly around the changes in capital gains tax, etc., etc. So. But yeah, I mean, it's steady as she goes, Chris. There's a good selection. If you're a home mover, there's a good selection of properties for sale. If you're an estate agent, you've got plenty of commission opportunities in your for sale drawer. The question now is just putting the two together.
Interesting. Now, you said, do we have some data with regard to the number of properties that are for sale? And as we went into the first, on the 29th of February, we worked out how many properties were sale, and there were 541,000 179 properties available for sale at the end of the month. And if you look, all the yellows that are on this graph now show you the same time frame at the end of February. And, you know, obviously it's going to be a hell of a lot more than what it was from in Feb 22. But if you were to say to most people that the number of stock for sale is lower than it was, you know, in 2018 and 2019, even 2020, people would actually laugh at you, say, well, no, there's a hell of a lot more. But it's the perception, isn't it? It's what is happening now. People are a little bit more raw to it, a little bit more aware of it. Interesting.
I think the perception is supported though by, I don't know, because I don't know whether you've got this stat, but my sense would be that if you added the ones that are marked up as sale agreed and for sale, I think those two columns together would be bigger. So I think the estate agents' pipelines are starting to swell, partly because they're selling a bit more, partly because they can't run the exchanges are still a little bit log jammed. Started to come out last month, and I think this month would be a good one for most agents on the exchange front. So I think if you add the two together, which is the total market size, I think that will be bigger.
Okay, well, we've got the individual numbers. I can't add them up live, but we'll have a brief look. Just interestingly, what the graph now shows the number of properties that are currently for sale compared to the same time frame as there was 12 months ago. And you can quite clearly see here that there are certain areas that have more properties for sale than others. Notably, the East Midlands, there's a 40.3% more homes for sale in the East Midlands compared to other areas. Interestingly, outer London, there is less. On the screen now is the graph now showing you the number of properties that are for sale by region. Now, on YouTube, you might not be able to see this particularly well, ladies and gentlemen. So all the graphs that are being shown today are available to download free of charge. If you go to YouTube, go to the description, scroll down to the bottom, there'll be a link there where you can download them. And all these graphs are available free of charge. You can use them on your valuations. You can use them internally. All I ask is that you do not use them on social media. You asked about the number of properties in agents' pipelines. The yellow number is the number of properties, and each yellow there is end of Feb. The number of properties that were in estate agents' pipelines. And again, it would surprise a lot of people that the pipeline in Feb 24 is 382,000 compared to 349,000 back at 23. But remember, we did have an awful lot of fall throughs then, didn't we? Going in from the quasi-quartile budget back end of 22.
But if you take out those unusual periods where it went absolutely bonkers, if you add the first chart we just looked at plus that, I think you're looking at a slightly swollen market, i.e. there is more going on now than there has been. Take out the COVID years, there's more going on now than there has been for a while. And I think that trend will set to continue for a little while until whatever happens. But market conditions are pretty standard and stable as far as I can see.
As you say, ladies and gentlemen, as Ian says, if you're looking for sensational headlines, you're not going to get them here. It is just steady as she goes, which I think is good news because remember, the property market is driven on sentiment. Let's look at the number of price changes this week. 19,623 properties reduced with an average price of 398,000. That has remained almost static in terms of around that late 300s mark. And in terms of the price reductions, we're looking at it continuing at around 1 in 8 properties are being reduced per month. Again, I ask the question each week, do you think that's enough, Ian?
I don't know whether it's enough or not, but obviously, depending on whether the stat from a few weeks back that you kindly put into the marketplace for everybody, the 53% sell and the 47% don't, if that stat's not shifting, then the answer is no, or it means that we're all playing this silly game of bidding for the instruction in the first place. But the certainly I'm seeing across my client base is that properties that had been sticking from maybe they were instructed back end of last year, maybe very early this year, have gone through the reduction process and are now under offer. There are some houses, I myself am looking for investment properties, and there are some properties that I've been sniffing around. I've seen the price come down, probably waiting for another reduction, but actually they're now under offer, whereas they had been sticking. So clearly there is traction within the buyer market. Buyers are coming back in, but clearly they're attracted to the correctly priced properties and repelled by the incorrectly priced properties unless it's incorrectly low. So I think there's a waking up of agents maybe getting it right a little bit earlier in the process, maybe at valuation point. And if we start to see a slide in that 53% becoming 55, 60, 65, then things are moving in the right direction. If that stat isn't changing or is worsening, then 19,000 isn't enough, or the amount we're reducing them by isn't enough. Possibly both.
Well, I can remember when we did the early stat shows in early 23, and you always said, if the price reduction doesn't scare you, it's not enough. Let's go and look at gross sales. This week, we're on 25,313, which is a slight dip from last week's at 26,373, which means, as you can see on the graph here, that's why the white line does dip. Yet we are still way ahead of 19, 18, 17. To give you an idea, in terms of sale agreeds, this week in 24, 25,300. In 2017, it was 20,100. In 2018, 22,400. In 2019, 24,500. And even in the Boris year, the Boris bounce, COVID hasn't hit yet. Okay, in 2020, we've still got a couple more weeks before the COVID really affected the property market. Even in the Boris bounce, 26,800. So that's not on this graph now, but just shows you that we are still, not that far off that 2020 good before COVID hit. In terms of year to date, in terms of sales agreed, we are on 226,000, which is 10.8% ahead of the 23 figure, and 8.8% higher than the 17, 18, and 19 average. It's not bad, is it, mate? Is it? Oh, asking price of the sale agreed is 359, and as a number of sales 25, 313. Thoughts on sales?
Well, I think it comes down to the conversation that we keep, having over and over, through the weeks is it all looks good if the agents can increase the percentage of what they list to what they sell. Whether that be as an industry or as the agent that gets it first. So all the ingredients in the pie are there. I think the revenue being taken out of the market is probably lower. And I think it's lower for two reasons. Possibly that we're still seeing the back end of some small percentage adjustment in prices in our pipelines. That'll ease as prices have stagnated or even started to go back up in some sectors. But I think agents have also, in some cases, have lowered their fees, and therefore the actual total value of the market in pounds and pence has reduced. And that's really where the agents need to get a grip of this for themselves. I mean, if they want to continue to lower the value of their own marketplace, then use fee as your weapon of choice to try and win an instruction. If you want to increase the value of the market, find a way of charging a little bit more and giving the vendor more in return. So I think what I really like is that agents have an opportunity. They've got properties in their for sale drawers that, if they got their act together, could create a really nice purple patch of sales and net sales and exchanges over the next 3 to 6 months. Maybe repair some cash flow issues that exist, because we know we're in this strange industry where we do the work now and don't get the money for God knows how many months down the road. But you can see it starting to repair itself, but some are still going down the road of overvaluing and charging little, which is just killing the value of their market, and it's killing their cash flow. And I don't understand why you would still want to be in business if those are your only two methods. It's not good for the customer. It's not good for the buyer. It's not good for the estate agent. It's not good for the individuals that work with you if you're an employed model. It's not good for you if you're a self-employed agent. You're just lowering the value of the marketplace. But why would you want to take, could you imagine Coca-Cola lowering the value of the Coke market? Why would they do that? And by Coke, I mean Coca-Cola. Why would they do that?
I mean, it's particularly interesting in this is that our mutual friend Peter Knight from the Property Academy always does a survey every single year called the Home Buyers and Sellers Survey, and they interview 10,000 vendors minimum each and every single year, and they've asked this very same question both as a multiple choice and pick your top 5 in terms of which, did you base your decision on the cheapest estate agency fee, yes or no? And then they also ask it, out of these 15 things, which is the most important? One of them was the cheapest fee, and the figure never ever changes, ladies and gentlemen. 1 in 6 or 16 or 17% of homeowners will choose the cheapest fee, but the others, the other 83% don't. You have to give value.
Yeah, first and foremost, look, guys, you should be reaching out to the Property Academy to become part of what they do. If you can get into one of their groupings so that you can have access to that sort of stuff. I mean, it's by far the largest survey of its kind that I'm aware of that's available to its members. It provides good insight. The issue is not, if you ask the same question of an estate agent, what percentage of clients choose their agent based on fee, you're going to get 90% say, yes, I don't know the exact stats. So there's a discord between estate agency thinking and the reality of consumer choice. And that gap is where the elite agents are now realizing that with firm management, good leadership, great training, recruiting the best people, having the best technology, that you can charge a good fee despite the mindset that you think the consumer is in, and still grow market share. I genuinely can hand on heart. Maybe I'll even ask some of my agents to come on here for you. I don't have the agents that are charging high fees always have the best conversion rates and always have the biggest market shares. Well, that has to conclude that their package is the best, not their fee is the cheapest. Because if the cheapest fee was winning, why are they top? Why are they drawing more revenue out of their market than anyone else? Why do more people go to them? Why do more consumers choose them if the consumer's choice is fee? Some consumers will choose on fee, of course, but if that's your avatar, you want to attract the cheap person, will do so. If you don't want to attract the cheap person, repel them, and go after the people who will pay a good day's, a good fee for a good day's work. But I would recommend hooking up with the Property Academy or Peter Knight or whoever at their end and saying, look, can we come along and take out a membership of one of their groups? Because the insight it gives you might help you break that psychology when you're surrounded by other agents who are constantly beating the fee problem and converting and selling.
And ladies and gentlemen, if you say it's different in my town, then I'm sorry, because Iain and I have heard that so many times. There is no such thing as my town is different. Every town is different. The magic thing is that actually they're all the same. You're dealing with human beings, and you have to create value and you have to prove to them. It's not your job. It's not their job, the vendors, to recognize value. It's your job to prove it to them. And when was the last time you went on some training and development to prove that? Just asking. Right. The gap between the average price of a property coming on the market and the average asking price of a property sale agreed will always be a gap, because the lower price properties have a higher propensity to sell. The long-term average of this is 16 or 17%. This week, the gap is 23%. So we're looking at the percentage gap between the red line and the yellow line, the orange line. This is the average. This is, as you can see on the graph, this is week 10 taken purely in isolation, whilst this graph here shows everything from the start of 23. And the percentage, as I said, this week is nearest down at 23%. Any thoughts on this before we move to fall throughs?
Yeah, I do interpret this graph, I think, a little bit differently, possibly than either yourself or others, in the fact that I think that I don't think it's showing that the bigger properties either have to take a bigger reduction. I think it's showing that the bigger properties are more likely to be overvalued by the estate agent. So I'm coming at it from a different end. I think the bigger the property is, the more excited the agents get, the more they typically get the price wrong, particularly if it's a property that might be, a little bit above their normal space and place, where their knowledge and expertise might not be great. They get all excited about the fact the fee is going to be particularly good, and maybe just add that extra 50, 100,000 on in order to try and win the instruction, which of course is it's great winning the instruction, but it doesn't mean anything if you don't sell it. In fact, actually, it's then a marker of failure against your brand for that value of property. So you've got to be careful. Winning an instruction and failing is actually a big red signal to another seller of a similar property, and it's an opportunity for an estate agent to show a case study of where you failed and they've succeeded, for example. But so I think that's more to do with that. I mean, good family homes, where I am now, as I say, I was looking around for an investment property. They are, property, and I was looking for a family property, not your typical investment property. A lot of these things are just starting to shift, but they are where I can see they've had one or two price reductions of greater than the amount that house prices have been falling by. So it can only mean that they were allowed to come onto the market at the wrong price in the first place. I don't know whether that was following a discussion with the owner where the owner was clear on your view, or whether it was the agent driving the overvaluation. I suspect perhaps a bit of both. But so So I don't think I hear that you use the sentence. Okay, the uber high end, take that out. London city centre, take that out of the equation. But that sort of middle to high end family properties where I am, Berkshire, let's say sort of a 1.2 to 1.5 million type of stuff. I don't think there's any lower propensity for that market to sell, and it's highly valuable, that marketplace, because it attracts the undermarket. And it gives you some kudos, it gives you some good cash flow when you sell it. The deals tend to go through quicker, etc., etc. I think the propensity here and what these graphs are showing, you are more likely to get the price wrong, and then either fail to sell it because the owner gets fed up, or the second agent comes in and gets it sold a year later because they get it right. And that's what I think is happening here. But it's very hard to prove. But that's my gut feel.
There you go, good stuff. You've said it before, and I can't disagree with you. I think that's an important factor. Is it the only factor? I don't know. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you've got any thoughts, do add them in the comments on YouTube. Let's go to sell fall throughs. This week, 5,309, 5,000, nearest damn it, 5,400 fall throughs. Last week, 5,200. The week before, 5,200. The week before that, 4,100, but then that was half term, so nothing. Half term always does affect the figures. In terms of the percentage fall through rate, this week we're at 21.3%. So again, the long term decline from the start of 23, where it was at 30%. Let's not panic slightly. We just had a slight upturn. Ignore the blips there. That's Christmas, so you've got such low numbers that it does do weird things to the numbers. You're looking at the trend there. The fall through rates, I said 21.3, but again, isn't it fascinating? And we say this most weeks, that the agent's perception is 1 in 3 houses fall through, when in reality, as you see here, the actual reality is 1 in 4, and this week we're in just over 1 in 5. And as I said, this week,
I honestly don't think that's anything to shout home about, though. I still think that's an incredible failure rate. If you do your due diligence properly, you pick the right buyer on behalf of your client. As you know, Chris, the use of reservation deposits, lock-in agreements, that's gathering huge pace in the industry. And I really hope to see this come down, because I think this is one of the things that puts people off selling. All this, only 1 in 2 actually finds a buyer. And then when it does find a buyer, 1 in 4, 1 in 3 falls through, and you're left with the costs. That puts a lot of people off actually doing this, as well as the 18-week process of will it, won't it happen, and all that stress. Our system is broken, and the only people that can really change it at the front end, and really change consumer behaviours, is by being brave enough to step out of the line and say, hey, I think reservation deposits and auctions are, well, we know that auctions and reservation deposits are growing. I think they should become the norm. And having a punitive agreement that bad behaviour by a buyer or seller is in some way penalised, to either stop them making the offer in the first place, or they don't pull out on a whim later down the line. And I really would say to agents, come on. I mean, the agents that are using it, they're now getting instructed because they have it.
You're a massive fan of reservation agreements. I am as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we had Brian Mansell on last week, and he's from Gazelle. Other reservation agreement firms are available. His fall through rate at Gazelle is around 5%. Well, considering that this week it's 21%, that's pretty good. And again,
it's better for the customer, it's better for the buyer, it's better for the seller, it's better for the estate agent, it's better for the person that you employ, it's better for the self-employed agent. The only thing that needs to happen is the agents need to be brave enough to say to their owners, this is a better way of selling. In my experience, when I've been sat with the listers that know how to sell it, the owners instruct them, partly because they've got this protected sale process rather than an unprotected sale process.
And again, getting solicitors involved on day of instruction. Valuers are not listers not very good, because they don't want to get in the way of getting their listing and getting their new list, on Rightmove. But again, getting solicitors, getting their pack ready, it's going to save time, with the reservation group. And again, I know you and I really, and again, we're not being paid to say this in any way, shape, or form, but outsourcing sales progression unless you've got a professional sales progressor, outsourcing sales progression is something that's magical and will reduce your, on average, from around 18 or 19 weeks to around 12 weeks. So just think how you can get your money quicker with outsourced sales progression. And we're not suggesting you go and outsource your sales progression, but is it just something that gets done at the end of the day if you can be bothered? If you've got professionals doing it, tied in with reservation agreements. You're going to get paid more quicker, get more listings. It's a win-win.
I think either way, you should outsource your sales progression, whether it be to an internal resource or an external resource. You should have a specialist, in my opinion, cash flow allowing and all that other stuff. But it is chicken and egg. If you have a proper trained resource, whether it be outsourced people like ASAP, or whether it be somebody internally, but as long as they're trained and know how to actually progress a sale rather than just know what's going on, then I believe that you will increase workflow within the people that are left in the business. They've got more time. I believe your customer will get a better service. I believe that you'll get quicker deals, less fall throughs, better NPS scores. If you add in lock-in agreements and other bits and pieces that can go with it, then I think you're really starting to streamline your process to maximize the chance that instruction that you worked hard for, you sweated for, turns into a move for the client, which is what you want, and hopefully a happy customer, and it turns into an invoice and cash flow. I don't understand the struggle that people have to either let go of certain things, for example, sales progression, and let go of the old traditional private treaty sale, easy come, easy go. You can buy it today, pull out tomorrow. I don't understand why they won't let go of that.
Well, change, mate. You know what humans are beings are like with change. Okay, net sales this week, 19,915, which is a slight dip compared to last week of 21.1. Week before that, 20.2. The week before that, 20.46. So we are slightly below. However, we are still way ahead. We are 106%, or 6% further on than the average in 17, 18 or 19. And we're 14.6% higher than we were from 23 figures. Year to date, as I said, 176,931 net sales. And again, you can see on the graph here compared to the likes of 17, 18, where it was 163, 164. Of course, it's not going to be anywhere near as high as it was in 21. The city years of 23,000, 223,000, sorry. But again, those were crazy years. Net sales, I mean, this is stuff we're going to get paid on. Anything to add on that?
Well, as I say, I'm a little bit surprised that white line isn't a bit higher than it is actually, based on what I'm seeing. Because I can pretty much say across my clients, I'm seeing that white line is now starting to cross previous years and be higher in terms of volume.
Well, no, so here we go. The orange line is 17 to 19, and the pink line is 23. So we're nicely ahead of that.
Yeah, okay. So it's the same thing. I'm just getting confused by the yellow, blue, and green lines, but. Look, I think it is steady as she goes, but if we can now get those sales through to exchanges, we can get them through quicker, and we can charge a little bit more for it, whether that be but by way of fee, by way of some upfront costs that we have to now do. You've got material information, which most agents aren't compliant on. You've got AML, which I think most agents are compliant on, but in some cases they pay for it themselves. I think we can really steady the ship. We've got a good opportunity now. As you know, Chris, I broker estate agency deals, whether it be directly for the owners or whether it be for the buyers or whether it be for banks. I work with a couple of banks that really, in effect, are asking me whether I should foreclose. Should we foreclose the loan? Should we shut this business down? Or should we extend their borrowing? And it's amazing the difference in how some agents are run fiscally, which is they spot the signs. They can see that valuations are a little bit low, so they do something about it. They can see that instructions are a little bit low, they do something about it. They can see that fees are dropping and they do something about it. There are some people that see all of these signs or are oblivious to it. They want the market to change. They want their cash flow position to change. They don't want to be sat there not being able to pay suppliers and worried about paying their wage bill, but do absolutely nothing. I mean, zero. I can't advise a bank.
Why do you think agents are not happy to grasp property data? Let's be honest, this is gold dust, isn't it? To some agents.
Because I don't. Maybe they don't believe it. Maybe they believe it's hocus pocus. But as you say, the sort of sentences, yeah, but that doesn't happen in my town, or yes, but the people in my area feel differently, or yes, but my competition do this. If you find yourself making those statements, I promise you, you are finding an excuse for yourself not to do the hard yards. The other side of the hard yards is profit, good cash flow, happy customers. If you're in the employed model, great, happy team, settled team, paid well team. I don't think there's a single business out there, good or bad, elite or not, big or small, who are not finding the pressure of wage demand becoming increasingly difficult. guys, if you need to pay these people more money, don't fight it. Just charge your customer more money. Every other industry does. The cost of getting your car repaired has gone up. The cost of putting fuel in your car, okay, fuel's a different problem. The cost of buying everything's gone up, partly because you have to pay people more money, partly because we've been in this inflationary situation, except for estate agency. Except for estate agency. It's like bizarre. Okay, so I'm going to spend more money looking after my client, but I'm not going to pass that on through my fee structure. Or I'm not going to find a way of selling a higher percentage of what I list, because you've got to do one of those two things. If you're just simply going to have an ever-increasing cost base, Rightmove taking their slice, I think everyone's getting their letters now or just had them. Other suppliers taking their list. I put my costs up to my clients have gone up a little bit to take into consideration the cost of getting to and from them. Everyone's going to be putting their costs up. The only way that you can deliver that is either take sell a higher percentage of what you list and or charge more. I would venture to say to try and achieve both. But at the very least, if you can take money up front for things like AML, material information, EPCs, maybe with a little bit of a markup, at least you're changing the cash flow balance, that an instruction is now a cash flow positive experience rather than a cash flow negative experience. You just have to have the foresight, the training, and the good listers and mentality to be able to push through the obvious concerns that people might have. Oh, but I'll lose the instruction. Well, the agents that are doing it aren't. They're not losing the instructions. So it's both frustrating, but it's a perfect storm that should force change, because I think it'll either force change or bankruptcy. I genuinely believe now we're moving into the haves and the have-nots.
Interesting. Right, a couple more graphs before we go to Chesterfield. So we've got net sales. We've already done the price changes as a percentage of listings. This week it is at 51.7. The long-term average is 42.8, and gross sales as a percentage of listings at 66. And again, that's slightly below the running average. But again, of 17, 18 or 19. Anything on this before we go and have a look at, just before we do, this is the pound per square foot at Sarah Green. And if you watched last week's show, you'll notice that we can now foretell what's going to happen to the land registry 5 months in advance, using the pound per square foot figures shifted on. So my reading capabilities there. Anything else before we go to Chesterfield?
No, the only thing I would say is the pound per square foot is I think an underutilized stat. I think nationally it means absolutely diddly squat, but if and I'm sure through 20CI and other people, you can break right down to a sort of local level what the pound per square foot is. It's very interesting about. It really does aid the correct valuation of a property. I know there are other factors beyond square foot, but to help support your gut feel, which is really how most valuers do it, based on obviously looking at similar properties. But square foot's really underutilized. Am I allowed to name an estate agent? I'm not sure if I'm allowed to name.
Yeah, you can do. You can say what you like, mate.
Jones Robinson in Newbury and surrounding areas. They're a fast-growing business. They do very well. They're a high-fee business. They don't. They high service, high outcomes, high fee compared to their competitors. But they always use pound per square foot as part of the process. But now the pound per square foot information, you don't really even have to measure the house. It's almost available to you by looking into the data and its previous sale, its previous floor plan. You've nearly always got it. So
yeah, it's on the EPC, ladies and gentlemen.
It's why new homes developers, if you happen to be in the new home space, if you spoke to Kevin Ellis from the Land and New Homes Network, a developer will want to know the pound per square foot of what's going on in the second-hand market to work out, what premium can they get for their pound per square foot for something that's brand new. Developers don't do that because they're stupid. They do that because they know that there is an absolute correlation. So I think pound per square foot is a very, very underutilized piece of information to help you be an expert.
As you say, it makes you look good. I mean, it's interesting. I was with some family the other week, and they were looking at a family house in Nottingham, and I was using some data and comparing different homes. And again, if you were looking at all like the 5 or 6 houses that had sold on their street or within like a quarter of a mile, the pound per square foot was almost identical, but there were different shapes, different sizes. But by showing that, you can actually say, yes, you're undervalued or you're overvalued. And so just bear that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that you can, if you're going to stand out from the crowd, why don't you actually use data? Because
Well, imagine if you're using one of those automatic tools for canvassing. Swift have got a particularly good one that I like. Imagine if your letter said, look, we've identified your pound per square foot shows an anomaly in the current asking price of your property. Give us a call. We want to discuss it with you. That's intriguing information for the client rather than, hang on a second, I'm open Sundays or
yeah,
I've sold
open 8 days a week. Yeah. Let us now move and go to Chesterfield. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so for the purposes today, we're going to be using a piece of software called Insights from a firm called 20EA, who are part of the 20CI group. They are considered the gold standard when it comes to property data. And the best way I can describe it is that it's Rightmove Plus on steroids with a couple of Saturn V rockets strapped to it with lasers and glitter balls. This truly is an amazing bit of kit. And whether you are in Chesterfield or not, this bit of kit, well, watch it, because you will see that this will prove whether you're worth your fee, whether you sell more houses independently. I must stress for the record that 20EA have not paid me or given me any consideration with regard to mentioning their software. The deal is that I use it, share it with you lot, and I get it for free in return. This piece of software is available. There's a light free version that you can have, and then you can have your own town and you pay them some shekels. I'm not going to say what the price is. I believe it's good value for money, but as I said, I'm not connected in any way, shape, or form. Okay, let's us go and have a look, Ian, at Chesterfield. Do you know the town well, mate?
To say I know it well is wrong, although I was helping somebody who is looking to relocate there at the weekend, try and source a property. So no, but as of this weekend, I've got a bit better insight. I'm about to get an even better insight. They're looking to buy something up there for to change their lives. They want to move out of the city up into Chesterfield, which is where they come from originally.
It's a beautiful Derbyshire town. It's nicely connected to the motorway network, very close to Sheffield as well. And there's some beautiful villages between Sheffield and Chesterfield, where the posh people of Sheffield live. It's a really nice part of the world. Right then. So for the purposes of this, we are looking at the postcodes of S40 to S45 inclusive. Some of the outlying parts of some of those postcodes might be covered by other little baby towns, but for the purposes, we're just looking at the core of this. Okay. So as always, I'll just talk, and then Ian, you just cut across me whenever you see something that you like the sound of. So we are looking between the 1st of January 2019 to the 10th of March 2024. And the first thing is we're looking at the levels of new instructions. Okay, so the average price of a property that's come on the market in the last 5 and a bit years is £226,000. There's been 21,500 properties come on the market at an average pound per square foot. Isn't it interesting? Ian was mentioning that, of £218 per square foot. Let's kick off and start with red brick. Okay, so
I mean, we can link this to the first part of the comment. Red Brick Mark Ross runs a great innovative business there. I believe it's mandatory, but I don't believe that they will sell a house on behalf of a client who does not want them to use I can't remember what they call it, but their reservation process. So, and I believe it's fall through rate. You want to get Mark on this show because he runs a really, really innovative business. But he has a slider where the client can choose how much they pay up front, and the more they pay up front, their fee comes down, and the client chooses it. So it's nicely gamified and correctly calculated so that his business works. But most importantly, in my opinion, every buyer that wants to put an offer in, if they want the house off the market, they have to go through this reservation process. Mark will be able to explain it for you better than me. His fall through rates certainly less than 10%. I believe I remember him telling me it was 8%. And they're the market leader, and their market leadership, I think, is set to continue because he's now winning instructions because he doesn't have fall throughs, and he's got this protected position where some, if not all, of his competitors don't. But look at Sheffield's a big area. That's a big market.
That's Chesterfield, okay?
Sorry, yeah, but he does cover some of Sheffield, but
yes, he does.
But he's a Sheffield agent. Yes, that's right.
Isn't it interesting though that whilst it appears using the 20 EA Insights data, his market share seems to have drifted slightly from 19 and is basically now hovering between 10 and 15%.
Of listings.
Of listings. Now we can have a quick look at sales.
We'll do it on exchanges because that's the key for me. If you can do it on exchange, I don't know if you can do it on exchange.
Slight drifting downwards. Again, I can only, don't shoot the messenger here, ladies and gentlemen. The data is the data. So that's new instructions. So let's go and have a look at Wilkins Vardy. It just take a little while. Hold on. I'll do Hunters and I'll come back to it. Just have to wait a second for it to come through.
It slows down when it's on.
It slows down, isn't it?
When it's on Zoom, yeah. But ultimately, he lists more and he sells more. I actually think that you'll see that those will be anomalies because, he's offering a protected position. He's turning away the wrong clients. He's not doing deals with the wrong buyers. He's protecting his sellers. He's protecting his agent's commission. I think he'll attract better people. I think he ultimately, in fact, I think his competition will copy him. I think they'll be forced to from an economic reason.
And again, I think the important thing is this. If you're judging your success on pure market share, that is vanity. The simple fact is, reality is the pound notes that you bring into the business that enable you to pay your team and basically be successful and get the things that you want to buy in life, because we're not running a charity here.
Well, also his cash flow position, as the clients might be choosing to pay him £400-500 up front for whatever, he's changing his cash flow position. If he lists 10 houses, he's bringing in £5,000 a month off the bat per office. He's changing the model to allow him to do things and be innovative and be creative. You're going to see that come through in the end because he's going to be able to invest more in his people and more in his training, more in his marketing, more in his office structure, more in his technology. And he's able to do it from a position of strength, cash flow wise, and knowing that his pipeline is pretty secure, where his competitors are cash flow poor because they're not taking anything up front in the main. And secondly, they don't know whether half their pipeline is going to exchange, none of it, or all of it.
Okay, let's just have a look at the other agents. So that's Wilkins Vardy, and they seem to be on a slightly downward trend with regard to their market share for new instructions. Hunters seem to be pretty stable, around 7%. Pinewood seem to be growing. Purple Bricks downward. William H. Brown, part of the Connell sequence, again a slightly downward direction. Wards, slight growth. Wilson's, Strike, Blundell's, Reeds Rains, Dales and Peaks. Frank Innes, again part of the Countrywide. Yopa, Strada. And we'll just do these last few before we Martin and Co. and Harron Holmes. Okay, that's new instructions. Let's just look at stock on market in Chesterfield. And this here shows you that, again, this is particularly interesting, is that in the postcodes mentioned, February 22, there were 953 properties for sale. And at the moment, as we went into the 1st of March, 1,732. Let's just look at red brick. This is the stock level. So again, it shows here that red bricks, and again, they've not been doing this model. When did Mark start doing this model?
You'd have to ask Mark, but you'd also have to consider, if you put Sheffield up here, I think you'd be starting to see a quicker response to his strategy, because I don't know, but Chesterfield isn't where the business started, therefore it's unlikely to be his strongest.
Yeah, Sheffield is the mothership of red brick. So okay, let's now move on and look at this. And this is particularly important. So we've done new instructions. So let's move this. I'm going to move this now to the last. Here we go. Let's start this here. Okay. So I'm looking from the 11th of March 2023 to the 10th of March 2024. Now, remember what Iain said is that, it's all about getting a property through to exchange of contracts. That's why we're here as estate agents. And we said that we're talking about, now, why are we talking about Mark? Because he's very well known in the industry. We know his model, okay? So every
Look at
agent.
his fall through rate. Well,
No,
it's half.
there's something even sexier here that's just amazing. I just blow my mind. I've spotted it here. So let's just ignore new instructions and sale agreeds. Okay, let's just ignore that for a second. And again, you've got to admit that fall through rate is bloody amazing, isn't it? And again, just keep your powder dry in on that one. This is the magic here. Okay, exchanged, withdrawn, a proper. So the magic is this: a property will only leave an estate agent's book if she either exchanges or she withdraws. Sale falls through, it's still in your ecosystem, doesn't leave. Okay, so in the last 12 months, Red Bricks have exchanged on 351 properties and withdrawn 117, which means 75% of the properties that have left Red Bricks books, they have earned money on it. But if some of their vendors have paid money up front, there's some of those withdrawn, because you said, didn't you, Ian, that they have like a sliding scale. I mean, just look at this. Red Bricks compared to Wilkins Vibe, nothing against Wilkins, but 70.7, 65. The average in Chesterfield is 55. So there's some decent numbers here. Don't bull yourself up. William H. Brown there at 50. Reed's Range down at 42. Again, that probably could do with some improvement there. But the magic thing is that this agent here, Red Bricks, has, top of my head here, a 6 or 7% greater chance. It's about 7% proportionally. If I was up against Wilkins Vardy, Mr. and Mrs. Miggins, you've got a 1 in 6 greater chance of moving with us than you do with Wilkins Vardy. That's not getting them in any way, shape, or form.
And his business is that he's got the biggest market share because he's got the most on. But more importantly, it's turning into the Mark Ross show. But basically, he's monetized. Well, sorry, in most cases, he will have monetized 117 withdrawals, whereas competition, it would be a cost. Those withdrawals are just a dead cost.
Because
unless you charge.
Because normally the number one person in the town, their exchange ratio is normally the one that's a little bit. They're all right. They've just got through there through grit and determination.
That's because he has these. I don't know what he has got terminology for it. His lock-in agreement, his reservation process, or whatever it is, which is, in the event that you don't go ahead. I can't remember exactly what his particular product is. And as you say, there's Gazelle, there's quite a few products, but he's created his own. It's proprietary. It's his. It belongs to him. He's been brave enough to step out of the norm and run headlong at change, to change both the statistics for his clients. He sells more of what he lists. He doesn't take on the faff, and he monetizes withdrawals. I mean, on what basis would you not want to look at that and say, hey, let's see if he can do it, why can't I?
Isn't this interesting? I've now just moved back from March 22 to March 23. Now the exchange ratios are higher because you were coming off the back of a 22 decent market. But it isn't interesting that Wilkins Vardy were ahead of Red Bricks. Can you see here? But but then when we move it back to where we were.
I suppose in simple terms, Chris, I mean, the stat, obviously, we've got a typical British place here, but the simple facts are, in my opinion, if as an agent you are standing still with your systems, processes, technology, your service delivery, your charging model, your payment of your staff model, if you are standing still, you are absolutely right to be disrupted by people that are not going to stand still and innovate, change, collaborate, do whatever it takes. On all of the different business strands, whether it be the way you charge a customer, whether it be your service delivery, whether it be your digital marketing, all those things. I think you should be looking to innovate and change all of those, cash flow permitting. But if I was going to change one that could have an impact on my business tomorrow, it would be my offer to the consumer. What is my pricing? What do I charge you for what? What am I going to give you for free? How long do I want you to be committed to me for? How much up front? If I could change that, then I can change my business instantly, because it means every listing I'm taking a few quid, and if I sell it, I'm tying up a reservation agreement. So that one simple change, if every agent in the country adopted those two processes tomorrow, I think our industry would go up in the eyes of the consumer, because we would have a higher percentage of what we list sells and a lower percentage of what we sell fall through, both of which we get the blame for, sometimes rightly, sometimes wrongly. the stats are pretty overwhelmingly obvious.
I
I'd love you to get Mark on this show if you can get him on.
He has been on my sofa a couple of years ago, but that fall through rate is amazing. And if there was an advertisement, for reservation agreements, it's just sitting right there. Here, the average is 22.1% of houses fell through, reservation agreements 12. So, not every single one of Mark's properties will be on the reservation agreement. The vast majority will. Okay, but the simple fact is that is heads and shoulders. That is, I've never seen that. That's really, really good. Okay.
I think I'm right in saying actually though, Chris, if you do speak to him, and it might be worth you getting a comment from him on your LinkedIn if you can. I don't think he will. From my understanding, and I could be wrong, and so I don't want to mislead people. I think his instructions to his listing team now is if the vendor doesn't want to work using a reservation agreement, I don't think they'll take the instruction. I'm not sure, and I could be wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong. But so I think 100% of his sales coming through the system now will be, if you want to buy it, Mr. Smith, we've got authority from the vendor. It has to be on this basis. If the client won't pay that reservation deposit, I'm not sure whether they still do the deal but keep it up for sale, or whether they just move on to the next buyer. You need Mark to quantify it, but he's been very definite with his processes. That's why it's worked. His leadership's been strong and firm.
Tell you what I will do, ladies and gentlemen, is I will speak. We're filming this on Monday, the 11th of March. It will be coming out on Friday. I will try and get to speak with Mark, and I'll try and put a comment in, because it's quite obvious that whilst his market share has dropped, his sales performance and his teams has gone up, and he's being paid on more. It just shows good leadership, good systems. You're on a winner. Okay, let's now move on and look at what each agent. Oh, bloody hell, mate. This really is turning into the Mark Ross show, isn't it? Right. Sorry. Do you know? Oh, my word. Right, here we go. This is, and ladies and gentlemen, this is the first time both of us have seen these stats, so we didn't know this was coming. And when you were spouting at the start, Iain, I said nicely spouting, I thought, for God's sake, I hope the stats match up what you're going to say, and thank God they did. Right, okay, so there's lots of stuff going on here, ladies and gentlemen, so we'll just go through this and look at each column individually and then see the importance. You can see the power of this data. So what has actually happened here is we're looking at the last 12 months and looking at all of the 496 instructions that Red Bricks have put onto the market in the postcodes. 20EA Insights have done a automated valuation model, or a Valpal figure, on all of those properties, and then looked at what Red Bricks have actually put it on the market for. And therefore, Red Bricks have the gap between what 20EA think it's worth and what they put it on the market for is a gap on average of 0.78%. So you would say that's the overvaluing. The percentage of it, you always got to have a little bit of gap there. The magic thing is how much have you gone? And isn't it interesting that the number one agent doesn't value over as value compared to Hunters, which is a 1.37. Again, nothing scary there. It's not 3 or 4%, which we've been seeing in some other towns. Let's now move on and look at this price achieved from original listing price. So therefore, what we then do is see what did the property actually sell for on land registry, and what percentage was that away from the original asking price. So you can see here that whilst Red Bricks overvalued by 0.78, they get 1.75% less the original asking price. So if you want to work out the difference, you add that and take that away from it. Now you could say, "Ooh, that's a bit complicated. People don't like stats." So what we do is we put it into pure pound note figures. If everyone had a £250,000 house, what would each agent sell it for? Red Bricks would sell it for 247,000. The average in Chesterfield is 245. Wilkins Vardy 242, Hunters 2421, and Pinewood 245,800. And you can see down there all the different the stats. So if you're looking at the core bigger agents, not only are Red Bricks really good at exchanges, even though they're, everyone would be waving their willies around saying my market share's dropping, oh, it's end of the world, or the other way around. But if you think about it, not only can Red Bricks say that you'll have less fall throughs and you've got a greater chance of moving, they can actually turn around and say, we will get you £5,100 more than Wilkins Vardy. Now, if you were having a fee where your fee is £1,000 extra, here is independent proof that you're worth the extra fee. Mrs. Miggins, if you go with someone else, yes, it will save £1,000, but it will cost you £5,000. Anything to say on this one, Ian?
Yes, I mean, I tell you what, Stephen Brown is a really good friend of ours. I want you to come back on in 1 year from now, and I promise you that these stats for Red Brick will be the same. And as long as Mark continues with his process, I will bet you £500 that I'll give to Stephen Brown's Computer for Schools charity if Red Brick's market share is not higher than it is now, and these other stats remain pretty impressive as well, because he's building a legacy of service. So he will attract the better agents. He's just on a pathway to doing something different. And he's probably got 12 months, which is why I'll give you 12 months before some of his competitors either go bust, which will strengthen his position, or copy him. So I will bet you that if his market share of exchanges hasn't increased, marginally or by whatever amount we can do that later on, I'll pay £500 into Stephen Brown's computers for schools.
And I think, isn't it interesting though? And again, is that he's actually part of the Property Academy, which again, this is not planned, ladies and gentlemen. We were talking about Peter Knight's Property Academy with Steph and everyone based there, and Peter Rollins. Is that he is an insightful agent, and everyone could learn a lot from him. Do check him out. Mark Ross versus Watkin. There's some videos I did a couple of years ago. And again, I hope everyone else reading this gets something from it. Let's now go and have a quick look at lettings. Sorry, not lettings. We're quickly going to do how quick agents sell. So in the last year, it's taken on average 70 days, you see here, to get from new instruction to sale agreed, and 110 days from sale agreed to completion. Let's look at what last year was like. So it was 41 days. Okay, so you can see quite clearly that the market has changed, and it's taking nearly twice as long to get a buyer. And then you can see here how each agent performs in the last year. So Red Bricks, new instruction to sale agreed 70 days, and then sold subject to contract to completion 107 days. They're pretty standard there, but again, you can see there's a slightly little bit of difference there. We'll just finish on lettings. Okay, so Pinewoods. Also, Pinewoods were fourth for resi sales, but they look like the big daddy-os when it comes to lettings. And now again, we can look at new instructions. We've got to take this with a slight pinch of salt, because most instructions are just relisted existing stock. We can't see new stock. It's very hard to spot market growth. Although, isn't that interesting that open rent are growing? Just to give you an idea, ladies and gentlemen, nationally, 5 years ago, they were at 4%. At the moment, they're at 12%. So
it is important to point out of listings. My clients use open rent. It's just they're simply then an advert to go and find the next instruction. However, they are a threat, because if they're getting them at source, if they get their act together on actually letting these things, then of course they're going to be a powerful proposition. But
okay, so we just have a flick through these for everyone, just having a look, just to see if anything's of interest to anyone here. Martin and Co. They're part of the Property Franchise Group. Roy Peters. Yeah, we'll just have just a flick through here, just so you get a flavour, so anyone watching can get of what's happening in the rental market. I'll go down to 20, and then we'll go back to Ian. Final thoughts, Ian.
Look, my final thoughts are the market is steady as she goes. Every agent, bar a few, is sat on a bigger commission opportunity in their for sale drawer than perhaps they have been. Don't lose that by not having tough conversations if you need to on the price, and don't undersell yourself. And if you can connect with the relevant people, you can DM me if you want free of charge initial advice, or whoever. Look at disrupting some of your current practices in order to become valid for the future marketplace. Primarily in the area of maybe whatever upfront charges you can go through, certainly reservation deposits, certainly auction marketplace, certainly some technology and things that can do some things for you. But you have to change, otherwise you become the W.H. Smith of the estate agency world, and Amazon will eat your lunch.
Thank you for your insight, Ian. More importantly, thank you for watching the show. Thank you for the kind comments you make. And if you have any constructive criticism, also please do put them in the comments or even send me a DM. Ian, thank you for your time today. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next week for week 11 of the Stat Show. And so we'll say goodbye and see you next week. Thank you.